Okay. Now, let me say this. If you apply yourself and follow my lead and do the reading that you should do, this should be the easiest A that you would get at this. Because what it deals with is a lot of things that the older people used to call basic integrity, basic courtesies, basic moral values. And at this particular juncture of the game, it is very important for us to have this discussion, and you will help me to understand why you took this course, and also too, what do you hope to get out of this course? I will tell you, I will communicate by emails for the most part, and WhatsApp if I think you haven't gotten it, because I think sometimes that we would get response by our phones very quickly, as opposed to waiting to go and see an email. But I will give you all of the information that you need in order to pass this course. One of the things also too, I would actually give you a methodology of how you can get through the course. I'll start again by introducing myself. My name is Nadine Fraser. I have worked in the insurance industry for, come June, 43 years. And I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I think it's appropriate because even at this particular juncture of the game, there are a lot of persons, as late as this week, someone emailed me on the fact that, oh, all you insurance people is a bunch of ripoff and a bunch of criminals, and you all have no ethics, and you all do all this stuff and whatever else. There are some persons out there who still believe that. And in my 42 years in the industry, there are reasons some people do believe that. And there are some things that were told and discussed that persons, when they not get their way, they say more than they should say, and they don't tell you the other side of the coin. There's always two sides, three sides to every argument. And I can tell you for all my life in the insurance industry, I have not gotten to a place where I think it is anything other than miscommunication. Some unscrupulous agents and agencies, and we're going to talk about those as well as persons misunderstanding what they call the fine print and not being fully disclosed or not being advised of the fine print. But from that, because insurance, particularly on the life and health side, could be a long-term situation. You could take out a policy 10 years ago and not make a claim, forget all the things that was happening or what was said to you when you first took it out, and then suddenly there's a claim, and then you begin to understand how it actually works. And it is not to the way that you was understanding it. And so, of course, you get to the place where, oh, you all is a ripoff, you all take my money all those years, and whatever have you. And so I'm very familiar with ethics, unscrupulous behavior, as well as lack of professionalism in the industry. And I guess that's why I'm qualified to have this conversation with you in this regard. But let me do the easy thing first, which is to have you introduce yourselves. And by introducing yourself, what I'd like to know is your name, which you prefer to be called by, and also to where you work, your position where you work, what do you do, and what do you hope to get out of the sessions that we will have? Because we're going to be here for 3 months, and I want to make sure, 12 weeks, I want to make sure that I achieve many, if not all of your objectives. So without further ado, I could go into jumping on Anybody who want to volunteer to start first, could feel free.
I can go first.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so good night, everybody. My name is Brenique Bain. I work to RBC. I'm a mortgage support associate for Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. And what I want to get out of this course, honestly, everything. Ethics is a common word that you hear, but to really understand it is what I want. It's what I want to get out of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much and welcome. Your name is pronounced Brenique or Branique?
It's pronounced Branique.
Branique. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Danielle Martin. I work at the Teachers Credit Union. I'm a clerk, and I hope to get all that I can get out of this course. Everything that is given, I hope to grasp it and understand it and use it. And you can call me Danny.
Oh, Danny.
Hello, Mr. Mintz.
Oh, Miss Martin.
Apologies. Who was that just now?
That was Danielle Martin.
Oh, Danielle Martin. Okay, yeah. Danielle, I heard that you was from Teachers and Salary Workers.
Yes.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Okay. Next up.
Kendrick Mintz, Teachers and Salary Cooperative Credit Union as well, collection officer. And similar to Brenique, I think Brenique, we did customer service and marketing together. To get the most out of the class in regards to the subject matter. But just looking forward to all of the communication and the conversation. Iron sharpens iron, and I want to be able to get the most out of the subject matter and soak it up as much as I can as a sponge.
Thank you very much. Who we haven't heard from?
Good night. My name is Shawnquelle Burrows. I'm an accountant at Family Guardian Insurance Company. What I want to get out of this course is a refresher. I took an ethics class at COB, so I want to use this as a refresher and also to build on what I would have already encountered in that course and just expand my knowledge of the subject matter, especially as you alluded to in your opening dialogue in the insurance industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Hi, Tamiko Musgrove. I work at Betty K. I'm in the accounts department. This is my first time back in class for a really, really long time. So I'm hoping that I'm able to grasp everything. Don't get left behind. And I'm hoping at the end of this course, I'm able to define the word ethic, be able to, find a better version of me when I present myself, when it comes to dealing with customers, coworkers, and so on,
Okay.
So that's what I'm hoping.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I think that leaves Tira.
Good evening. My name is Tira Bowe. I work at Scotiabank and I'm a customer service officer. And I just want to have a deeper understanding of the ethics and professionalism, because in the banking institution, we normally throw around having integrity and making sure that you do the right thing. So I want to be able to take this back and share it with my colleagues, everything that I've learned from this class.
Thank you very much. Over the years, I've had a lot of Scotiabank employees RBC, Bank of the Bahamas, one or two insurance people, and some others. The thing what I like to say about ethics and professionalism is that everyone needs it. We're always about, when we hear about it, we're going to talk about what it really means. We're also going to do some case studies where it puts you in an ethical dilemma and it asks you, how would you react? What would you do? What are some of those things? And so I take it from the position that we know very little. And as we get to clarify and define by the end or closer to the end of the class, you will be telling me, that don't sound too good. What I would encourage you to do is to listen out in the media, look at the newspapers. There's lots of stuff online as well. And I will help you along as best I can. Any questions, comments, suggestions, concerns that you might have, I'll be more than happy to assist where I can. And also too, I will tell you, because it is what I'm calling a soft skill course, some of you might see the need to make improvements. Others might understand the dilemma, but choose not to go in the right direction. I can only hope that your consciences will be piqued in a way where you go, well, it really doesn't pay at the end of the day. And so that's our hope, especially when you're dealing with clients and their funds and monies related to them. For all my years in the working, you hear from time to time, this person has been brought before the courts, that person has been fired, this one has done X, Y, Z, and all relates to unscrupulous behavior, so much so that we have a whole plethora of legislation and procedures and codes of ethics and codes of practice and know your customers and auditor and audit trails and internal audit and external audit, just to catch or minimize these kinds of things. Will it ever be at a place when it all is over with? The answer is probably no, because for every rule you put in place, you find somebody who is just creative enough to say, let me see, and then we go X, Y, Z. I used to use the example over the years of saying, imagine stealing 2 cents from every customer in the bank over a 10-year period. But I think they now stopped the pennies. So, just thinking about it, that can amount to millions of dollars or over a long period of time. And so what drives someone to do that? What drives someone to focus on the unattended or inactive accounts or the elderly accounts because they don't pay as close attention or X, Y, Z? What makes someone do that? I will tell you exactly how you can get through this course. It is a lot of reading. I will tell you exactly what you need to do to pass this course. You will not have any surprises. Let me say, and if you want to make a note of this, if you haven't done so already, this is the best time to do that. How will the course be evaluated? The course would be evaluated. One, you have to do a case study. What I mean by a case study is you will have to check online, check in the media, check persons who have done certain things and things that you've heard that you might particularly be interested in. You will have to write a paper. I don't expect anything more than about, I would say, if you're double spacing, 4 to 5 pages maybe. I will send you this list so you will have it by email. What that case study would do would be, this is what I'd like to have. Things that I would want to focus on when you're completing your case study. You're talking about, and you don't have to make a note of this because I'm going to send it to you, but I'm looking for the names of the persons involved in the group, whatever the group is, the name of the scandal, what was the breach or the theory involved in the scandal, the occupation of the main persons involved in the scandal, what industry or country or any acts that would have been broken, the breached acts, any breaches, and decide whether it was a lone wolf, a mistake, or a conspiracy. Now, you might have something financial happen, but it was just a big mistake and it cost a lot of money on XYZ. A lone wolf is where you have one person acting independent of anybody else, where they just go within themselves and decide, I'm going to do something that's unethical. I'm going to steal monies on my own, whatever have you. Or you have a situation where that individual didn't get any help from anybody else at all. In a conspiracy, that is where there are two or more individuals involved. So you have the CEO and the financial controller working together, or an accountant and a customer service rep working together. The two of them have conspired together to create an unethical behavior, or to embezzle, or to steal by reason of employment, or whatever have you. Because with certain checks and balances in place, then it should be a situation where it should not have happened. But if I got my friend in the office who, once I pass it to her and she signs off on it, I make some money with the view that I gave her some kickbacks at the end and we're working together, that's a conspiracy. So you should be telling me the case that you've decided to write on. Was it a lone wolf situation? Was it just a big mistake? Or it was some conspiracy? And I can tell you, I could give you a list of cases that you might want to look at, but there's a lot of them online. And I can tell you how to access those as well. That because we're talking about a 6 weeks program, that case study I would expect would be handed in around week 6. So you have a lot of time to do research. You have a lot of time to ask questions. You have a lot of time to make things happen in XYZ. And any penalties coming as a result of that, and then any comments. So your paper should include those kinds of things, well laid out, well understood. You will turn the paper into me, and at the same time, we will have one session, like the 7th session, where it's a case study week, where you will be expected to say, my case study was on Enron, and what I found in that case was this is what happened. These are the penalties, and not to read exactly what you have written, but to kind of say, what have you learned when you was researching that particular case study? And so your case study and the percentage you get on your case study will count towards 20% of the grade. We are going to have a midterm exam, and I would give you at least 2 months notice. I would actually put out a calendar so you can see when the midterm exam is, when the final exam, and also when the case study is. And I will send that to you by next week. But the midterm exam is 20% of the grade. I see Shanquelle, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. How will the exams be facilitated? Will it be like online, or we'd have to come into a center?
You would have to, because it's only 9 of you, we'd have to make arrangement at BIF's where you would go in and actually take the exam. And of course, with all the social distancing and protocols in place. And so with 3 rooms, that should not be a problem at all. And they normally give you 3 hours to do the exam, which is usually true, false, multiple choice, and a section on analyzing a case or cases.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. No, not a problem. Now, so you would have, I go back to the case study, which is a written exam. I mean, a written report that you would give me around the middle of this, like week 6 or 7. Then there's a midterm that would be around that same time as well. You get 10% of your grade in terms of class participation, which is in our Zoom meetings, the things that we're discussing, those persons who participate and actually have questions and actually is interactive with myself and other participants. You get 10% for just participating. And then the final exam will be as much as 50% of the grade. And so if I go over it again, the case study is 20%, the midterm is 20%, class participation is 10, that'd be a total of 50%. And then your final exam would be 50. So it will not be a one-shot deal for you to get an A or B or whatever have you. It's a matter of all the work that you've done cumulatively throughout the session. Because there are some people who are very good at writing, there's some people who are very good at talking, there's some people who are very good at doing research. And so we're wanting to see how rounded you are and can be, as opposed to memorizing a particular definition or whatever else. And so against that background, you know what you're up against in terms of the final, the midterm. So give an example. If your midterm paper was 100%, you got 100% on the paper, it would only count towards 20% of your final grade. So I would break that down again as we get closer to that. The sessions will be questions, cases. Sometimes we have a breakout room and we expected you to report back after going out into the breakout room and doing some certain things. All of that would be judged, and that part is evaluated by me, myself and I. And so coming back to ask questions, coming back to talk to us is all a part of what I would get, as opposed to somebody who's been the entire 12 weeks sitting in the background and not having a word to say at all. I couldn't possibly give you 10% of participation when I have no feel for how we're not being participating in the sessions or not. So any questions so far?
You said that you will be able to send us a timetable in regards to when the paper should be submitted as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
When the paper should be submitted, when is the midterm, and when is your finals?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not a problem at all. What I expect is that when we come to our sessions, that you would have already read the chapter for that session prior to, and so we could have a discussion as opposed to going through page by page by page in that particular chapter. So if I look at today being the 20th of January, this would be, and we would just be out to discuss chapter 1. I would have sent out, for those of you who I had emails for, I would have sent out a note to say that you should collect your books from Ms. Dean, and to make sure that you would have read at least chapter 1 in preparation for this session today. But from the sounds of it, it seems as if, or from the looks of it, one or two of you may not have collected your book as yet. But that's not to stop us from having a discussion, because the more you learn, the more you participate, the more you get information. And I don't plan to talk for 3 hours. So I would definitely need you to participate in that way. Now, this is what I'd like for you to make a note of, or to understand at least. When you are doing the case studies, there is a method of how to handle case studies. And I will repeat it from time to time. And I will also remind you from time to time. But there's 4 basic steps. And it's important that it comes in this particular order. The first thing you do when you're given a case study, you should identify the facts of the case. Anybody have any idea why that is important?
I would assume, just like a criminal case, whenever you're presenting an argument as a prosecution, you would present all of the various different charges and offenses that have been brought against the individual.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Kendrick. So you are the investigator. You are the person. You can't just, and a lot of women fall prey to this. They hear a piece of a story and they come to a conclusion. I'm saying that's the worst thing to do when you're trying to arrive at or trying to actually identify and look at these case studies, because so many things could happen in the middle there that might have or could have changed the outcome. So until you identify the facts, and not what you feel, not no innuendo, not what you guess, not what you assume, what are the facts of the case? And then consider, second thing to do is to consider if there has been any breaches to any theories or acts. Were there anything, because there are some things that may be immoral that are not illegal. There are some things that might be subject to interpretation that makes it ethical in one environment, but unethical in another environment. And there are also cases that might, just by one change of a sentence, you could find that there was no breaches at all. Okay, I would give you an example, and we're going to talk about this later on down, but in the case of conflict of interest, where persons might be engaged to do something that might conflict with their position and their personal, their business position and their personal position, they might be in conflict. But if there is a full disclosure, then it's no longer a conflict. Give an example. If I, as a manager, was engaged to carry on an office party, and I've been given a certain amount of funds in order to run the party, and then my son, who is a chef, I want to hire him because he's my son and I have this money. That's definitely a conflict. It's definitely a conflict. Now, before I'm given the funds and XYZ to do whatever have you, one, I could find out, is it a bidding situation that the organization is expecting me to have, or are they trusting me to make the best decision, XYZ? And then I know. And then I should also take in consideration, is my son known to the individuals who I'm responsible for? And I can say, but listen now, let me make sure if anybody has another caterer that they would prefer to use, then fine, but I know my son, he cooks good food and yada, yada, yada. I'm putting that out there, I'm disclosing it and whatever have you. And persons in the room, other managers say, oh, no, I've been to his restaurant before, I like his food and whatever else, we want to go with it. It's not my decision that's being made now. I've kind of taken myself out of the decision-making process, but I have fully disclosed that that's my preference, but now let's take a vote. Then there's no longer a conflict of interest. You see? And so we have to be very careful when we consider what is the theory or any breaches of any act that might be involved. And that's step 2. And it's very important that it actually goes in these particular steps. And then once you've identified the facts, consider if there's any theories involved. You want to make a decision based on the facts and if there was any violation of those theories. So you got to first figure out what are the facts, what are the theories, has there been any breach, or make your decision on the facts if there's been any violation. And it could be a situation where then the last step is you support your conclusion with case studies or anything, any other comments that you might want to make. Or I see where someone said, I'll use the example I gave of conflict of interest. If one of the facts in the case was that I did not make that disclosure that this person who I'm planning on hiring is my son's company or my husband's company, persons would say the situation is conflict of interest. And then in their comments at the conclusion, they could say, but had she disclosed XYZ, this would have been the case in XYZ. Because it shows me that you are thinking beyond the question that is being asked, and you're more well-rounded in what the issues might have been. So that's the 4 steps that I would want you to look at and think through when you're analyzing any case that we will be discussing, as well as looking at your case in your case study. Okay. And my suggestion is you could collect a lot of information right off the internet. And one of the things you will do, if you're not familiar, you can get familiar with Google. You go to Google and you just type in financial scandal, and you will see a whole list going back and dating back as far as Enron and WorldCom and those kind of things, and Martha Stewart. And we ourselves in the Bahamas, we have had our share of scandals, and particularly in the financial services industry, with things that are happening. And even if you look in the Tribune and in Guardian, we've had cases where we've seen situations, and we will be discussing some of them in the session itself. And so you now are going to be looking out for when you hear and see these things, or you see people being hauled before the courts, and it is in their professional capacity that they would have done X, Y, Z. We're not focusing on the criminal who uses a gun and robs somebody, X, Y, Z, but we're looking at the white collar crimes, as it were, and looking at the impact to an organization, to a society, as it relates to those kinds of things. Any questions on anything that I would have discussed so far? Okay. If there are none, I've given you how you can pass the course. I've given you what the course will be evaluated on. I will send to you the things that I want to be included in your case studies, in completing the case studies, what are the focus. I'm also going to send you again the steps, the methodology of identifying the facts of each case. So you will have those 4 points that you will always be knowledgeable about and keeping the 4 as we go through our course. Okay, looking now at the course itself. Here is my suggestion on how you can get through the course. Every chapter has at the very beginning of the chapter an introduction in terms of the objectives of that chapter. Here is how I think you should attack each chapter. Look at the very beginning of that chapter and look at the objectives. And once you've seen the objectives, because the brain has a funny way of working, once you identify what those objectives are, then go to the back of that chapter and you would have a section called keywords in this chapter, which is given below. And you just read the key words because your brain is going to connect with those words when you look at the chapter. And just before the key fact chapter is actually that something we call review. So step of getting through the course, through the chapters, look at the objectives, look at the keywords, then read the chapter, and then look at the review. Okay, 3 steps. So if I give you an example of chapter 1, on page 7, we have Introduction to Ethics. The objectives of chapter 1 is, it says, and I will quote, by the end of this chapter, you should be able to explain what is meant by ethics, explain the different approaches to ethics based on a range of theories, explain terms, absolutism, relativism, explain the term deontological and teleological, and be able to compare these 2 approaches to ethics. Describe the content of various ethical models and apply them in decision-making contexts. So it tells you right off the bat, I'm looking for what ethics really mean. I'm looking for what are those approaches to ethics, those different approaches to ethics. And then I'm actually giving you, the book is actually giving you 4 basic terms that if you get out of chapter 1 and you don't know this, you've missed something. Absolutism, relativism, deontological, for those of you who look at that word and go, oh my God, I can never pronounce it. It's like the boy named Dion. Deontological and teleological. What is the difference between the 2? So the fact that it says these are then the objectives, then these are the words that you're going to be looking for. And then describe the content of various ethical models and apply them in a decision-making context. So the objectives of the chapter is very, very clear. And then the keywords in this chapter are given below. And on the side of the keywords, if you want, there's a space to write your own revision notes and to add any other words or phrases that you want to remember. And so that's on page 44 for chapter 1. And the keywords are descriptive ethics, nominative ethics, comes back to absolutism, cognitism, relativism, virtue ethics, deontological, eudaimonia, duty-based. So it's kind of sensitizing you. Categorical imperatives, teleological, consequential. So if you finish this chapter and you haven't seen any of these words, then you know you need to go back to the chapter and find those and find the definitions for those. Because short definitions, 3 or 4 sentences, should be able to explain any one of them. Egotism, pluralism, moral reasoning, cognitive development, pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, conventional, and any moral intensity, moral framing. So those of you who have the book and have been following, those are the steps that you would go through before you actually tackle looking at the chapters. I can also say if you read chapter 1 and you were totally exhausted, chapter 1 is the longest chapter in this entire book because it sets the frame for everything else that we're going to be talking about. And that's why it's long. So getting through chapter 1 actually sets the frame for the entire course, because a lot of the terms that are mentioned there, we will also be looking at in more detail later on. Okay. So why this course is very important is because a lot of people have technical competence. They have the right BGCSEs, they have the right master's and bachelor's degree or associate degrees, but do they use words like fairness and compassion? Do they have a good work ethics? How do they work on the job? Can they earn the trust and respect of the people that they serve? Because you have a lot of issues going on in organizations that makes it very difficult for persons to keep in line with all the things that are happening and the number of pressure that's involved. And now we're in a COVID environment. How do we get out of it, not only from a health perspective, but does this environment makes it easier or more difficult to do unethical behavior? Is cheating on an exam definitely unethical? And does this environment lend itself for that kind of thing, for that open book kind of situation? And I guess that's why the actual test for this course is actually in a physical environment. But who knows, will we come out of this pandemic and by next 3 to 6 months be back to working XYZ? We don't know. We also have situations in the pandemic where some organizations are saying, I can't afford for my staff to be off quarantine in 14 days when one person has been tested positive. My staff is too small, they're multi-dependent. We need to do something. So we've seen a shift from the 14 days to 7, 10, depending on if you tested positive by the antigen or the PCR, or if you go back in 5 days and your positive turns to negative. So there's lots of changes that has happened within the last month or so that hadn't happened to a year and a half earlier. Before last, anybody tested, close contact, 14 days quarantine, you're off from work. Now they're seeing less deaths, more contagion, but less deaths and less hospitalization. So some organizations, because of the need to get back to economic recovery, are taking the position, well, if your case is asymptomatic and you could wear the K995 mask on the shield and whatever have you, you don't have to quarantine for 14 days. Is that fair, moral, ethical as it relates to the safety at work, the Employer Safety at Work, Health and Safety Act, or what is the confinement of or the exposure to other staff members? There are some organizations who are working on a rotation basis where there's a hybrid. There's some people in office, there's some not in office. You're going some days when you're just trying to, you have to go in, but outside of that, we have seen lots of persons working from home. Prior to the onset of COVID, we would have thought it would have been impossible. But after and over the last 18 months, there are some companies who are considering only going back with a skeleton crew and have a lot more people working from home and continuing working from home. And some companies have gotten to the place where they have decided because of productivity or lack of productivity, they could subcontract some people as opposed to keeping them on board at the full rate that they had before. So I anticipate, and I've seen it already started, where there was some laying off, some cutting back, some we don't need all the staff that we thought we did before. And so they are retooling. And I know one particular bank that I would not name, they are finding success with specialists independently working out in the marketplace, as opposed to necessarily being seated inside in an office, in an environment where we had to create a space, a desk, and whatever else. And so downsizing is taking the position not only in terms of staff, but also in terms of physical space. We're seeing that. So is it ethical for these things to happen? Are we expecting, and are companies expecting the shareholders to have the same kind of returns on their investment as in the pre-COVID environment? All of that speaks to ethics and primarily whose responsibility it is for good conduct. Is it the board? Is it management? Or is it, in some cases, both? Who is ultimately responsible? And what are some companies doing in terms of, do we remove all the tiers of people you have to go through? Do we put in more rules and regulation and more people need to sign off and more checks and balances and audits coming up or whatever have you? So the ethical standard and your personal ethical standard, because there are some people, I was in a meeting recently where the person said, some things is put on my desk for me to sign, but I don't know why or how this was done. So I'm refusing to sign it. Somebody else might have to sign it because my reputation is on the line. More of us need to have that kind of feeling towards who we are and the reputation, the legacy we want to leave in an organization or in our personal life, where we take ethics on as if it's our personal reputation at stake. You know, and not because somebody put it across your desk, you have no idea of whatever it is, and you just put your John Henry to that paper. What we're saying is, when you sign your name, you are attesting to the integrity of that document that you're signing your name on. So be very wary when someone says, oh, I just bring this up for you to sign, and they're talking fast, they push it in front of you, and they're handing you a pen, okay? They should give you the opportunity to read and understand what you're signing. Because when D-Day comes, the only document that we have to say what was ethical, what was illegal, is what we see in front of us with someone's name, number on it. And so you have to be really concerned that your personal courage and conviction of your reputation and strive for such high standards as you would want to have in the industry, in the work in which you do. And I see many of you are in the accounts department. Usually when people or handling money, when people do unethical things, it's because of compensation or remuneration or some reward financially coming down the pipeline. Any questions? Okay. If there are no questions at the moment, yes, what we're going to do now. Can I just see a show of hands of those again who actually have copies of the book? 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see. Chanel, Kendrick, and Tira. Okay, what I'm wanting to do at this particular point is to put you in a breakout room, and one person in that breakout room would have the book. And one of the things that I would want the person in the breakout room and those who have the book, make a note of this for me, please. On page 11, there is a theory of 3 individuals. Plato, Aristotle, and the Enlightenment. We get out a group of 3, so there are 3 individuals with the book. What I would want to do in those breakout sessions, and you have about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long you take, is the person with the book will read the section underneath Plato, for example, and having read it, the other 2 persons, because it'll be 3 in each group, maybe 4, the other persons say, having heard that, what do they gather is that approach to ethics, and what is ethics in that environment. So the 3 of you are going to discuss it, and then someone in that group will be taking basic notes from the discussion, and then when we come back together, and whoever's taking notes or whatever have you, between yourself, you agree on who will be the presenter for your group, and that presenter for the group will be discussing what is ethics in this particular environment. So you will be sharing with the group what you understand to be the main tenets, the main description of ethics as it relates to that approach to ethics. And so there's three beginning on page 11 that would take care of 12. And you stop there for me. Plato, Aristotle, and the Enlightenment. Those are the 3. And I'm going to put you in groups 1, 2, and 3. And you can just make note of this for me, please. Group 1 is going to be looking at Plato. Group 2 is going to be looking at Aristotle. And group 3, the Enlightenment. And it's all on page 11. Okay, so when you see that you're in group 1, you know that you are going to be discussing Plato. Group 2, Aristotle, and group 3, the Enlightenment. The person with the book has to read it, in all of those cases, is like 3 short paragraphs. So you're reading it to your group, and then you're going to discuss it for a few minutes, and then someone is going to come back, and whoever's responsible for speaking on behalf of your group is going to be saying, this is what we understand ethic is as it relates to this particular approach, given the information, whatever have you. And that should take us a few minutes, and just give me a sec to make sure I have my breakout rooms assigned appropriately. And I should take about 5 minutes, just about 5 minutes, just to make sure that we have it all set up. So just give me that. You see the rooms pop up. I want you to, who am I missing? I want you to I'm going to open up all rooms now. Or when you see the rooms open up, just make sure that you have the conversation. I see. Since we only have 6 persons instead of 9, what I will do is just have 2 persons in the group, so we could get through it. And I will make sure that one of you, let's move this person out of this group. Exchange with Kirsten. Okay. And Chanel. Okay. Chanel has a book. Sean has a book. And Kendrick has a book. Okay. I've gotten it open the way I want it now, and making sure that there's at least 1 person in the group. And I'm going to open the group now, and I'll give you a few minutes to get set and get organized, okay? Okay, welcome back. Before your presentation, let me just say this. On page 8, on the top of page 8, it is something called, the heading is, that paragraph is, what is ethics? And the first sentence says, ethics considers what is right and wrong, and whether conduct by individuals and organizations is good or bad. So there's some element of judgment there, and it all centers around human behavior, what the individual or group would do, whether they benefit or not benefit on behalf of themselves or an organization. And so there's some exercise of judgment about ethical matters. And whether it's right or wrong could depend. And once you back up your information with why you think this is unethical, there may sometimes be no right or wrong answers, because we also are a global organization in some cases. What might be appropriate in our neck of the woods may not be appropriate in somebody else's neck of the woods, like in the Eastern countries or in Dubai, for example, in those Arab countries, or what might be acceptable over there might not be acceptable here because our culture is different. And so when you make a stance as whether it's ethical or unethical, and you're able to back it up for why you answer that way, and you could rationalize your argument, then you would get the marks for your answer. You just can't say, oh, that was good or that was bad. You have to back it up. And the objectives of any business enterprise is that you are able to maximize shareholders' value, but at the same time, you're looking at the various consequences of individuals and their groups. Okay? And so ethics have to be looked at a wider scale than just what's good or bad, because what's good or bad can depend. And what we've seen over the years is that people are becoming more and more conscious of the impact of their actions, not only on themselves and the organization, but on society, especially in an environment where everything ends up on WhatsApp or everything ends up in social media, through Facebook, through Twitter, through Instagram. You have to be ever more so careful as to what your behavior say about yourself, about your society, as well as about your organization. And what are your feelings towards this statement? As far as the organization is concerned, you are a representative of that organization 24/7. Give me some feedback.
I think it's true, Ms. Fraser, because sometimes you may not be in uniform. Like now we have to always be in uniform, but I could not be in uniform and just go in the food store and someone may say, hey, Miss Scotiabank. You know, they recognize me from my job, whether I can call them by their name or not, they actually recognize who I am. You know, so you always have to act and like I would never say anything bad to a cashier or anything like that, because I know how it feels for a customer to stand in front of me and carry on with me. So like if they're trying to fix their cash or if they're trying to clear their drawer, I'll just tell them, okay, I'll wait until you're done. And then once they say, okay, thank you, then I'll proceed.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Well, I going to say, when I have on uniform, yes, of course. Because half of the time, if I don't have on uniform and I do come across customers I want to hide. Most of the time, especially if I know the company ain't doing what they're supposed to do, yes, I want to hide.
Okay.
And ask for her take when she says, you know, they do address us, hey, Miss Scotiabank. If I have an issue when I go to any store, actually, I just let the cashier, whoever I'm dealing with, I say, could you please get management? Because this is above your pay grade. I mean, get the people who are getting paid, because I gotta let them have it. I don't give it to them. I give it to you according to your pay grade, get management. Because I tell the customers, let me get the manager.
Okay, okay. Or what about the situation where I work from 9 to 5 and it's now 7 o'clock. I'm out by Arawaki having a few cocktails with my friends, and I just decide to get a little tipsy, get a little out, and some words come out of my mouth that is frowned upon in some circles. Should Ms. Scotiabank, should Betty Kay, should Teachers and Salary Workers Cooperative have a challenge with my behavior outside of business hours?
I believe that once you work for a company, you represent that company, not just while you're at work, but even when you're away from work, you represent that company. Why I say that is like how the lady said, she'll be out and someone will say, hey, Miss Scotiabank, they recognize you as working for this particular company. So they not necessarily call you by your name. They call you by the company name because you represent that company. So even on your personal time, especially if you're in uniform after work and you're hanging out these places, you should conduct yourself in a certain way. We all are professionals. So I don't think a professional should be carrying on in such a manner like that in public.
Okay, Ms. Martin. So
Yes.
I have a question then. I know of a scenario where at a Christmas party, somebody got real loose and got real warm.
At a Christmas party, at a company's Christmas party.
Christmas company party.
Okay.
And they were summarily dismissed the very next week. So I do concur with Ms. Martin, but then I would want to play devil's advocate, Ms. Frazier, if I could.
Yes, you can.
I don't think they should be dismissed. They should have been warned, especially if that was their first time. It was a first time occurrence. They should have gotten a warning, but I don't think they should have gotten dismissed for it.
Ms. Martin, when can you be you then? Even if the scenario is wrong, there's wrong, you're not wrong, but why then would you have to take the back seat?
When you decide to work for these particular companies and the type of profession that you have, you are professional. A professional is supposed to carry themselves in a certain way. You don't portray yourself to be something else in the public eyes. Now, what you do behind closed doors or in the space of the privacy of your home or with your friends, that's fine. But when you're in a public setting, you have to carry yourself like professional because you don't know who's watching you at all times.
I think it's more so like from a place of personal accountability, because to me, I'm only indebted to the company I work for my contract hours. So I don't think that they should be able to affect what I do beyond those hours. I think it comes to my personal accountability, how I want to portray myself. So if I want to go and have a drink on Fresh Fry, I shouldn't have to be saying,
well, they're not
my
saying
boss see me.
wrong with having a drink. They're saying,
but I'm saying, but some people
and then carrying on a certain way.
But some people might see me. Some people might see me have drinking on Fish Fry as an offense to them, and they could be like, "Oh, they have their employees drinking in public." So it's like she said, it's a judgment thing. It's a personal judgment. So I think it's depending on, as long as you're not slandering or hurting the company's reputation. I think after work hours, you're an individual.
But and most of these companies' contracts, before you sign them, and their policies, it states that you must, even outside of work, you must carry yourself in a certain manner because you still represent the company. In that case, you don't need to sign that contract then.
Sound like slavery.
When you look at
let me say
Martin,
let me say this.
When it comes to that, hold on. When it comes to that, like Sean Quell say, my hours is 9 to 5. You got my 9 to 5. Anything after 5 o'clock belongs to me. If
Not
we're
exactly.
having a Christmas party, no, I'm not gonna, and it's the work party. I'm not gonna drink and carry myself because I gotta be vigilant of what is going on around me because I'm still to work, even though it's a party setting. I'm still to work, so no, I wouldn't act out of character. But as long as I'm not on that job, I'm not a police officer, I'm not a defense force officer, I'm not none of the above. I'm gonna act according to how I feel.
Okay, let me say this.
Yes.
I brought that conversation up to be devil's advocates, and I see Kendrick will have something else to say. So let him say that, and then I can round this up.
Okay. Daniel is actually correct. I can speak from what I know. It's simple as saying that you are off when the clocks say you're off is not exactly true, because most companies would have an issue with you. For example, you getting a secondary employment. That's usually a breach of contract, and that's on your time. If you have a secondary job that's after the hours of when you get off from your institution, that's actually frowned upon as well. So a degree, when you do sign those particular contracts, they do actually, to a point, if I could say, own you for more than the regular
institutionalized
hours.
slavery.
Hey, we recording. Shh.
But 90%
I understand exactly what you're
90%
saying. Shaquel,
But
Shaquel, I understand exactly, and I agree with what you're saying. But what has transpired is that a lot of institutions frown upon the fact that if you go and get secondary employment, because it gives the impression that you own me from 5 until 8:59 the next morning, 5:01 to 8:59 the next morning. But that's what most employers are doing now. They don't want you to have secondary employment.
I think the frowned upon portion is if you do not disclose it, because then if it's not a conflict to what you're doing, then it shouldn't be an issue, but they ask you to disclose it, not to say that you cannot do it.
Okay, I can leave that
But,
one alone. Corporate demonstration, that's me for the night.
Okay, all right.
Okay, but one more thing. I don't know if you guys realize, but 80 to 90% of managers have their own business, different from where they work with us. So, but they don't see that as a conflict of interest or frowned upon, because they're also manager and have their own businesses.
Tamiko, I'm getting
get paid.
the impression that you are against management, but I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to say anything more on that.
No,
But you say these people
I'm
and
just
those
saying,
people.
I know a lot of managers that have their own business. So even if I work for a company and I get a second job, the point I'm trying to say is the majority of the managers them have their own businesses different from working with the company.
Well, let me say this. You guys are all halfway right. It depends. It depends on the contract that you sign when you're going in. So don't just be so anxious to get this job that you go and sign anything without reading all the documentation.
Exactly.
I've had situations where persons like Kendrick mentioned was at a picnic, a company's fun day, and they carried on so loose that the company actually dismissed them shortly thereafter. I've also had situations where the person was seen in such a negative light that that person was kept on, but they were there long enough to see other persons get promoted around them who were possibly coming after them. And so even though they were not saying it outwardly, that picture that they had in their mind of that event actually carried over as a label to that employee beyond. I also know of somebody who had and so my thing is, it depends. I also know somebody who had a situation with a tattoo, and the tattoo was not seen with the uniform on, but the tattoo was seen at a beach picnic with the rest of individuals. And that too was frowned upon. I don't know if the person ended up being fired, but they were actually reprimanded. And it wasn't the fact that it was a tattoo, it was the fact that the tattoo was identified with a particular, what's the word I want to use?
Group?
Yeah, let me just, for want of a better word, unscrupulous group, as it were, or a group of.
Yeah.
Listen, you're what we go to jail, right?
Oh, man.
So yes, it might be looked at as institutional slavery, but a lot of organizations, and particularly in the financial services industry, they want you to behave in a certain way. Nothing's wrong with you going out and doing XYZ, having a few cold ones at fish fry, but if you end up in a brawl, end up in carrying on, end up in a big fight and XYZ, yes, you can be hauled in and be reprimanded and or fired. And
Even before they hire you these days, they go and they do a research on social media and all of that just to see, I guess, what type of person you are.
They check you out. So be careful what you put on these Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. They do check you out and see what kind of life that you seem to lead before they actually hire you. That's a part of HR nowadays. So yes, companies are very interested in what you do outside of business hours. And some things are frowned upon, some things are unforgivable, and some things are, well, we don't say anything, but you don't seem to be getting invited to the boss's parties too often, or promotions for that matter. So I can't say it's right or wrong. It is what it is. Okay. One of the things about ethics, if we start off as old as ethics was, and if we look at ethics in terms of basic core values, ethics is as old as the Bible. And it actually ended up where when we decide that we want to codify or we want to write these things down, our laws are based on what we feel are acceptable ethical standards of a society. And so ethics is extremely important, especially in financial services, especially if you're dealing with monies. And there's some things that they had to put into a strong legal system to back up what they expect certain things to do. And right now, I mean, within the last 5 years, with the Know Your Customer and all the anti-money laundering and terrorist financing requirements and all the stuff that happens. 15 years ago, once you know John Brown was to three-piece corner and he had a little business shop, that was sufficient. Where he got his money from, what he got to sign, where he deposit 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000. Once it got into the bank, no one cared. Now you are mandated to ask certain questions and to know certain threshold. And if you see, for instance, the banks have this policy or institution have a policy, anybody, they ask you what would be the value of your normal deposits. If you say $5,000 and then you suddenly bring in 10,000, they must ask you some questions. Or you suddenly bring in 7,000, they must ask you some questions. And then too, some persons know that they're being asked questions if they bring 10,000. So they bring 9,900. So in essence, that in itself should tell you, you should ask some questions. Because people normally don't deposit that close to 10,000. They either do a 9 or 9.5 or not 9.9. And so people know how to get around the system once you put the rules in place. And so you need to be very vigilant in that regard. And so the issues really started with the ancient Greeks and what was relevant back in the day. And Socrates was one of those who talked about ethics can be, how ethics is compatible to selling. In that the more ethical a person is, the more customers they will have and the more business they will keep. So it's advantageous for somebody to be ethical. Say you're a plumber and you get a reputation of not finishing jobs, or right after you finish the job, the people got to call you back. You're not going to get too many customers. But if this person comes in, he really looks at the place and he really tells you all the things that he can do before he does it, he tells you his price and he tell you if you have any problems within the next 3 days, call me back and there's been no charge. You would recommend him to other people who's looking for a plumber. And so Socrates' position was observed that the more ethical people are, the more successful they would be, because they'll be trusted by their customers and they would have more business and they would do more business, because it makes them feel good about being honest and actually having a good moral and ethical standard. And so professional knowledge can lead to an individual doing the right thing. And some people believe professional is just dressing up and speaking in a certain way. okay, which is not what we talk about when we talk about profession. Are we going to look at different definition of that word professional? Because I'm giving an example again. If you take the position that a profession is someone who get paid for what they do, and leave it at that. I can play ball, but it isn't until I get paid or go to the NBA. I'm a professional ball player. And the only difference is I'm getting paid for what I do now. Then the question comes up, is a prostitute a professional? You see what I'm saying? So you have to be very careful. Kendrick, why you came on as if you were going to say something, but then you changed your mind?
I have no comment, Ms. Frazier. No comment at all.
Okay, so you have to be, my point is you have to be very careful the definitions you put on some of these things, okay?
Ms. Frazier, question.
Yes, sir.
I can let that pass.
Even though you have your camera off, I could have feel you wanted to say something.
She is a professional in some way, shape, or form, because let's go to Amsterdam. Because it's ethically acceptable by their quote unquote society measures, she would be considered a working professional in the sex industry. So she is a professional, and it's all based upon, again, on our laws.
Yes.
And what our society could consider as acceptable. So she's a professional, just in the eastern side. You gotta go on the eastern side for that. Come in the west.
Thank you very much for that, because what you've proven is it depends. And you're going to hear me say that a lot. It depends. And you just gave a classic example of Amsterdam. Yes. And it's because of the cultural nuances there. And so that's why it's always important. And that comes back to my point when I say, when you're looking at case studies, you need to not just jump to a conclusion. You should look at the facts, because I could have given that scenario and said we were in Amsterdam or in an environment where it is acceptable XYZ. That changes the whole picture. And your comments as relates to deciding on that case would be changed based on the cultural nuances of the people in the eastern area. So you're absolutely right, Kendra. And so when I mark your papers up and as it relates to case studies, I'd be looking for you backing up your conclusion with information based on the information that's there. So there's no necessarily right or wrong answer when it comes to ethics, unless there are some universal laws that come into being. So having said that, and we've had that very spirited and provocative conversation about institutional slavery, what is a profession. Let me hear from you now as to what you found in reference to these different approaches to ethics. Who wants to jump in? If you don't, I'm going to volunteer you.
Okay, hi, good night.
Go ahead.
So I'm Krishna. I was in the group with Kendrick. And we had Kent. So what we've understood that Kent looked at things from a scientific approach to try and understand how one came to a rational decision versus Plato and Aristotle. Mm-hmm. And the example when a customer came to borrow money from the bank and she wanted to lie basically to get a request, we thought that is unethical of her. And if she didn't do something like that, what other customers or the institution would accept going forward from others.
Okay.
So Kendrick, you want to add anything
And
to
you
what I
want to add
said?
anything?
Yeah, the example with the plumber, where Kant looked at it, is that she was being completely unethical in the approach. Now, how desperate you are for a loan. And Ms. Martin and myself know exactly how desperate people could get for loans. They will, ethically, they will lie.
What you mean, wait, hold on. What do you mean ethically they would lie?
Oh, God. Okay.
How do you do that? How do you do that, man?
How do you lie ethically?
You can't, listen, ethics is to figure out what is right and what is wrong. Okay.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Persons will use creative ways in order to attain a loan.
Which means it's unethical.
It's unethical. Yeah, it's unethical.
Okay.
And the example is that Kant is a big proponent of what we know as the golden rule. Do not do to other people that what you do not wish to happen to you. So this whole concept is scientific, is the rationale of how you come to your conclusions. I found it to be very interesting, but I don't run on too much.
Okay.
The thing is that he would much prefer that were compared to Plato, those who would you look at things and from a Christian traditional type of way of doing things, is basically use common sense, some proven methodology to come to a conclusion on how you can make your decision. Basically, find a scientific way of doing it, or something that you can prove, even though persons challenge this theory, but to find that ground where you could actually prove this is the reason why I did this, and it has something to do with science rather than, could I say, Christianity per se.
Okay. I give you guys a B. Also too, and you're right with what you said so far. In his approach, he talked about things in absolute terms. It is absolutely unethical to lie, period. So anytime you lie, there's no such thing as a white lie or a little lie. It's absolutely, no, according to Kant, it's absolutely not acceptable. And in the case of the customer who wished to borrow the money from the bank, but realized that if she tell the whole truth, the bank might decline a request. The question is, should she lie? The answer, as far as Kant is concerned, is she should not lie, period. And so it's a universal situation, and lying is not acceptable. She should take her chances with getting the loan or not getting the loan by absolutely telling the truth. I've also seen where a person has said, you know what, since you tell me the truth, I will do X, Y, Z. Because most of the time, the person's behind the desk, they could find the truth if they look deep enough. And I always, in my industry, we talk to people who we ask them their salary. I know, in all my years in the industry, very few people will tell you the truth. Because when they want something or they want a mortgage, if the reason why they say go and get an employer's letter is because they know people was lying all along. And so now we're not taking it. You say you make $20,000 and you need this loan that we need someone who's making $50,000 to support. You can say you make $50,000. So we don't ask you no more. Bring in an employer's letter. There are a lot of things that we have now in system is because we've been burnt in the past by individuals in other environments. So a lot of the rules that exist today is because of things that have happened in the past. Okay, so that was group 3. Good job. What about the group that had Aristotle? Group number 2.
Okay, so what we learned about Aristotle was that his argument, well, his philosophy was about people want to live a good life. And his philosophy was very strong in saying that once you are a good person, good things will happen to you. And if you're a bad person, you will not succeed in society. And basically, the early Christians, they adopted his philosophy. But his philosophy was very vague because he never listed his virtues or his principles. He just basically made these statements saying that once you do good, good will happen. If you do bad, if you're a bad person, bad things will happen to you.
Okay.
Sean, where do you want to go?
Anything else?
Just one more thing. I'd say to us, it looked like he took on a more personal accountability perspective as opposed to a societal perspective.
Right.
So he's saying everybody is responsible for their own fates, not really looking at it from a society as a whole.
Okay. And the crux of his approach is that we all have these virtues. And you would hear virtue ethics or virtuous ethics. And is people are concerned about developing and maintaining their own personal virtues. So you have these basic core values that you will not go beyond. And like you said, one of the challenges was we did not define precisely what these virtues are and where they come from. And depending on, even in our society, depending on how you were brought up and in the environment in which you were brought up, certain things are acceptable and certain things are not. Some people, I've been teaching this course for a while, and some people say to me, but everybody does it. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it ethical. Some organizations are known to do it. Give you an example that's in our Bahamian culture. If you don't tip somebody to get this job done, it probably won't get done. Is tipping ethical?
Nope, it's not.
15% gratuity, it is legal if it's a CBA attached to it.
If you have, if your job is one that permits you to get gratuity, sure. But if you're being paid to do your job, you are not. It's not mandatory that a client tips you because you're being paid by your company, by your institution to do your job.
But what if it is the custom of that organization that if I call my boy and I gave him $50, I could get my paper signed quicker than if it go on the par with the rest of them other fellas.
That's unethical.
It's unethical.
But it's
Definitely.
customary.
Excuse me?
It's customary in our society. Society, what's the term I'm looking for now? That would be it. Sorry.
It's accepted.
I think, what's it? And I do not agree. I agree wholeheartedly with.
Are you talking about the cultural ethics?
Yeah, cultural ethics.
It is, Miss. It is cultural. Because
it is a factor that
become a
affects
norm,
ethics.
a quote unquote norm in our society, basically. So it's acceptable, even though it's unethical.
Yeah, I get that, right? But you must understand, Martin. Martin, you have to understand. There are certain things that affects ethics. It doesn't say that it's right, but it affects the whole concept, certain factors, age, gender, religion, and all of these other stuff, and also customs. Our custom, Blackbeard hasn't gone anywhere. Pirates are still here. They just change clothes.
So what you are saying is that as a person wanting to hold myself up under Aristotle's virtues, I should make up my mind that if I want to get this item done, I have to add 10% on and just pay the bill.
I mean, it's sad to say it has become a way of society these days that you know that you won't get anything done expeditiously unless you tip someone for it. But I mean, it should not be that way.
And I think
Well,
we need to look at it also from
why not take the
sector we're
position
talking
as
about.
Tamiko took prior, where she wants to see the manager?
That ain't gonna do no good, because if we talking about, if we
Because
are
even the
talking,
manager may want
let's
to
be
manager go
clear,
one
let's
What
be
you
clear.
supposed to do?
All of us know what sector we talking about. Let's just call it for what it is. We talking about the government sector, because in almost every other sector, you can get the things done somewhat effectively, unless you're dealing with a utility company. Anyway, but the government sector, unless you have the sleight of hand and use a magician, I don't think you get anything done effectively in this country, because when you call for the manager get me cut too. And see, that's the problem in our society right now. We have no morality and we are not balanced at all. And that's a sad state for us as a country.
Exactly.
But it's something that we need some leaders who are actually going to do the right things and have a firm hand in doing those things.
But that goes back to how Aristotle basically saying, why are we waiting for the managers and the upper people to do it when we have to take personal accountability and start within ourselves? So you could kind of look at it from that way too. The change could start with you.
Exactly.
And
You
it
take that stand.
It can start with me, but the fact is that there is such a systemic culture in government and getting, you need something signed. It's like persons are not motivated for whatever reason to do their jobs. Personally, what it says about our government sector is that we are absolute trash. Unless you're paying for it extra, persons are not going to come with a mindset. And I know when I say that, some civil servants get completely angry and annoyed at me, but that's what we give off.
Okay. Well, I would accept what you're saying, because you are saying it's a widespread systemic situation that has existed from time immemorial. So we're not necessarily saying one administration as opposed to another administration, but it's the culture that exists in that sector. And I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree. I'm just going to say what is. And I bring these issues up because we as individuals have to take the position, will I fall in line with the status quo, or will I stand and have the courage to stand on my own personal ethical behavior? Because you will be faced with ethical dilemma throughout your existence. And how far will you go left or right will depend on how in tune you are to your basic core values, that some things are just beyond. I will not go beyond. Me personally, I will not go beyond. I will not sign up for, I will not sign on to. And that is the only thing that we could hope for. And that's the only thing that organizations can hold you to it. Because you have situations where things happen and a manager, knowing you so well and what you stand for, will say, no, that ain't done yet. Something else might happen. That no. But without you having that kind of reputation, it's like an all-star, anything goes. We have the last one on our list, Plato. Let's hear from Plato. Who was in that group? We had Aristotle, we had the Enlightenment, Nabi. Who we haven't heard from yet?
That's me and Tamiko. I don't know where Tamiko went.
Boy, Tamiko, she threw you under the bus.
I know where my friend gone.
Now that's what you call unethical behavior.
I waiting for her, but I want you to wait too long.
Okay, let's see if you can help each other. Just start and we all will help you.
Well, basically this year they're saying that life is, well, basically he is saying ethics is basically like justice. You know, you follow the state, you follow the rules of the land, you do what you're supposed to do, and you live in harmony. Everything will be smooth sailing. Basically, that's what he's saying.
Okay.
You know, you do right to follow. You do bad to follow. But at the end of the day, it's what's in the best interest of the individual or the state.
Okay. So, Tira, you want to add anything to that?
We also discussed how, like, back in the day when you visited the States, the first thing we did once we sat in the car was buckle up. But it took so long for us here in our own society, within our own community, to actually follow that law. I mean, we came up with so many excuses why we couldn't wear the seatbelt, why we wouldn't wear the seatbelt. And as Tamiko say, when you hit Bay Street, everybody just automatically buckles up. So if we just follow what we know, we wouldn't get a ticket, or we won't be pulled over by the police because we're doing what is right from the beginning.
Okay, that's a good example. I'm glad you made that example. Because the question then comes, are we following in line? Are we falling in line because of the penalties? Like in the United States, you know, if you miss and not wear your seatbelt, they could pull you over, charge you, and you got a big long ticket. But if you ride around here, some police see you, they don't even check. You could go from here to West Bay Street and beyond. Well, you buckle up when you're getting around by West Bay Street, but as long as you're on the other side of town, you're driving all around all over the place. So buckling up is not, you jump in your car before you start your engine, you put on the seatbelt.
Yes.
Could that be because of the lack of discipline and penalties that we envision? And even if we get a ticket, we don't have to go try and pay it off because nothing happens.
Yeah, or you could just, like Kenrick and the rest said before, you can make a call and someone will get that sorted out for you.
Tamiko, boy, between you and Kendrick, I don't know. I have east and west on my side over here. Okay, just get back to
it. Ain't me. Notice I ain't say that.
No. Let's go back to Plato though. Let's go back to Plato. Because I want to make sure you get this point. Plato was saying that there should be balance and there should be harmony, and there's a reason to all the madness. And we want to live well and do well, and we want to live in harmony with the world around us. And so if we perform these things in an ethical, just way, it demonstrates that this justice is good for everybody, the individuals and the state.
Right.
And so you got to maintain this order with everybody and everything in one environment. So if we look at Plato's style and approach, it comes back to what might be just and courageous and with wisdom in one individual may not be the same thing in another individual. And what someone thinks of as a good life for them may not be considered a good life for somebody else. So it shows that that approach has some flaws. Okay. You guys did a very good job with that. Let's do another approach here. I'm going to organize again in your groups. And on page between 14 to 16, there are some cases. And I just want for you to practice looking at cases. For those of you, for the one who have the books, I'll be setting it up again. And the one on page 14, it has case number 1. You're going to be looking at case number 1. You're going to be looking at case number 2, and then case number 3. Okay, and your breakout room, and because I'm wanting to wrap up, we will actually only take about 10 minutes at this, because I just want to get your feet wet, and there's no right and wrong. It's more or less to have this discussion. So give me just a sec or two to open up the breakout rooms again. And room 1, you're going to be looking at case number 1. Room 2, you're going to be looking at case number 2. And room 3, you're going to be looking at case number 3.
The card,
Go ahead.
the card has a message handwritten by Bill with many thanks for your support. Has Bill acted ethically, and should Trevor accept the gifts?
Dun, dun, dun.
It looked like I had lost some people in.
I don't know. It keep taking us out.
Take us out, please finish it.
Well,
Yeah.
it looks as if I don't have that many people online anymore.
Unless BTC and cable drop. That's entirely possible.
Okay, so have you guys had you gotten to the point where you have discussed the case?
No, not as
No,
yet.
but I
No.
could look at which one would anyone.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's see how I'm gonna do it. Let me I know I had a error just now, actually. All that good stuff you were talking about the government, I had actually paused recording, and I never started it up again.
Don't worry about that. That's the good stuff. Yeah.
No. But I'm saying it's a good thing, eh?
That's good for us. That was good for us.
Okay, and all them things y'all saying, but them companies which y'all work for, it was not recorded. Okay, let's talk about the deontological approach.
Tamiko, you want to take this one?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I can. That's no problem. That basically represents the duty of oneself. Like Kendrick explained to me, you do have your benefits, you do have your limitation. Like he said, for the Republic of Vietnam, it is your duty or expected of you to be a part of the army at some point. But he said there's also limitation that not everybody has that mindset to want to do it. So you still do have freedom of choice at the end of the day. Let me see what else. Basically, he said too also that there's a fact of I think the word is naturalization, if I'm not mistaken. Now you could correct me where it says you do unto others that you would have them to do unto you from a religious aspect. What else am I missing? How healed you now?
You're basically there. We examined the deontological approach and its strengths and weaknesses. The strengths being that if a financial institution wants to be duty-based, as the example that they gave, they should operate in integrity and uprightness and be completely honest with their clientele base. A duty in regards to nationalism, the example cited in the book would be that of the Republic of Vietnam, where if called upon, they would be able to respond by joining the defense force. And they looked at the aspect of, or examples in regards to the religious organizations such as Christianity, Islam, how they actually mandate that based upon their religious doctrine, that they give to the poor as well. And we examined just basic, because Can has a bunch of stuff in here, but just basically looking at the whole concept. The limitation of duty-based is basically at the end of the day, everybody has the free will and determine whether or not they want to participate or give back or give of themselves for the greater good.
Okay, great stuff. Great stuff. The key there is to understand that Kant comes up again, and also too that he summarizes the duty-based ethics in terms of we should have certain things as there's neutral in the state, what is and what it should not be, and it should be applicable in reality. And so the judgment is made and actions are taken upon based on a moral interpretation of what is right and what is wrong. Okay, and so his idea was that, and I think Tamika mentioned it, that others should not do to others what they would not like to be done to them. And they talk about relationships with others should be regarded as the underlying objective. And so everybody wants to do well. And one of the benefits of this duty-based approach is that many governments have codified their laws based on the duties of citizens and have built these into their constitutional framework. And so taking what used to be the law and what it was set out and how they were operating, a lot of countries now have legislation that says what the duty of individuals are. And so there's no dispute as to what they may be. Okay, let's see if there's anything else there. I think you guys might have missed. Focusing on things like integrity, focus on things on open and honest dealing with others. Over time, some duties can be reviewed and revisited and redefined, especially based on international pressure from certain countries to do certain things. And on page 29, it talks about the main limitation of the duty-based approach is that the problem with a duty-based approach is that one can come up with exceptions to every rule. And like how Kendra came up with the exception for prostitution to be considered a profession based on the locale in which we live, people could come up with exceptions and not subscribe to what it is, quote unquote, the duty of all citizens to get involved. And so we're going to talk more and more. The ontological approach that we discuss here is going to be repeated in other chapters so you could get more clarity. So if you miss it, and I really would want you to, by next week, to have at least reread over the chapters so that those of you who don't have the book to get more clarity on the issues that were brought up here. Okay, I don't want to go beyond the second session without you not having your book, because I'm going through and picking out the main portions of it, but because the test itself is going to be true, false, multiple choice, you have to really read the other bits of information that might be relative to that. And I don't want to go on any further in that regard, but you have to get the book. Okay, let's turn to the teleological one.
Okay. The teleological approach is basically defining ethics based on the outcome of the action, if the consequence of the action was either right or wrong. There's three main types of this approach, which was the utilitarianism, which is the greater good, the egoism, which is just the individual, and the pluralism, which is a combination of the two. That's what I gather.
Mhm.
The main advantage is that the majority of the people at any time would be satisfied or should be satisfied through this approach.
Mhm.
They did mention that with the egoism, even though it looks like it's a selfish way to look at things, that if each individual is satisfied, it can still bring value to the society as a whole. And then the main disadvantage is you neglect the minority, and then the minority can also in turn cause a uproar in the society because of they feel neglected.
Right.
So that was basically that in a nutshell.
You guys covered up most of all of the main points that I had in my mind, but I made a note. Let me just quickly have a quick look to see if you miss it. Yeah, in other words, the end justify the means, because it is actually involved with the consequences of the action, and you wanting to find the greater good. Okay, wonderful. Keep those thoughts in mind. We're gonna expand some more on the teleological and deontological. We're gonna revisit those same cases again, but taking it from a different angle. And you're going to see, that's where we're going to expand upon some of the things that Kendrick is bringing out into a different way of looking at it. And actually, it's 4 cases that is going to be repeated, and we're going to be looking at that again. So I'm seeing it's like 5 minutes to 9. I think time went so fast because we were having so much fun. I was trying to figure out how he's going to get through a whole 3 hours, but I mean 2 hours, 3 years, 6 and 9. But it helps when you have an opportunity to discuss the theories together, and you get to see different approaches to the same information. And we also, by putting you in a breakout room, you actually got to more familiar with your colleagues, and that introduction that would have already been made is how we will continue to work, where we could go to breakout rooms and discuss different issues, and then come back with a view to sharing of issues with the individual, but with the group. But I cannot stress enough that you really need to, if you haven't done so already, go through chapter 1, because chapter 1 sets the stage for the entire course itself. And if you understand and appreciate the different approaches as we build on them, then it makes it much, much, much easier. Do we have any questions for me before we sign off? Any comments, questions, suggestions as we wrap up?
So Ms. Fraser, you basically want us to go and review just what we did up until page 29 when we get this book?
What I want you to do is to review chapter 1. I picked out the critical issues that I think I wanted to discuss without having to go page by page by page. But that's not to say you shouldn't take advantage of getting more clarity in that. Almost to the point of chapter 2 goes into, just to give you a preview, chapter talks about ethics and the organization. So it's going to be using those terms again that we have discussed tonight. So it is critical that you understand fully the advantages and well, first of all, what they are and the advantages and disadvantages of those. And there were two that we didn't talk about, but it wasn't as critical as the deontological and teleological is absolutism and relativism. Okay, and you touched on the cultural. I want you to get that kind of embedded in your mind. So I cannot say, oh, you don't have to go back to chapter 1 at all, because if you haven't read it yet, you should go back and go over the entire chapter. But if by way of discussion, I help to identify some of the key objectives of chapter 1 and things that you really need to know. So don't go away from here saying, Ms. Fraser say, I don't need to read chapter 1.
No, I just was gonna go over what we discussed in class today, so I can get a better understanding.
Yeah, no. Go to chapter 1, because what chapter 1 is the foundation on the entire course. When we get to chapters 2, 3, and 4, they're going to be making reference to some things that will happen in chapter 1. And so that's why chapter 1 is critical to you understanding the basic terms and things that we want to go on for. I couldn't go through the entire chapter in the amount of time that we had, because it'd be too boring. It would be me sitting up here reading the chapter with you, having me to read the chapter. I would want to more or less make it more interactive so we could kind of start to put it in our locale and how we become aware in our community as to how these things might be affected. The other suggestion I would make is that you start to at least look at financial scandals and identify, because of your own personal interest, which scandal you might want to be looking at, because the 5 weeks are going to run up so quickly with a lot of things, and some of you might be taking more than one class. So the earlier you start to look at and identify the scandal that you want to write on, the better.
Ms. Frazier, sorry, I just dropped out about twice. Our local internet provider. So I didn't get anything that you've said over the last 3 minutes.
Okay. I was saying, for those of you who have not read chapter 1, it is critical that you read the entire chapter, because chapter 1 is the foundation on which the entire course is built. In my having us do the breakout room, highlighted some of the objectives of chapter 1 that I want to make sure that you get. But that's not exclusive to any other information that might be there, because we did not pick apart absolutism and relativism, because I wanted to focus on deontological and teleological and the time that we had remaining, with the view that all of those different definitions are going to be coming up in chapters 2 and beyond, because chapter 1 is the actual foundation for ethics. So you can't get beyond chapter 1 and have it all make sense if you don't read chapter 1. So for those of you who don't have your book, I'm suggesting that as soon as you get your book, you need to go into chapter 1 and make sure you understand those terms that we discussed. And we look at the historical background. We looked at the different approaches. We looked at virtue ethics and the ontological and teleological, but we did not have a chance to discuss in turn absolutism and relativism. So I would expect that you read that information.
Okay.
So Ms. Fraser, excuse me,
Yes.
one more thing. Are we going, with chapter 1, you did say that it is the longest chapter in the book. So we're going to be on chapter 1 for like a minute or two, like 2 sessions, 3 sessions.
Oh, no. No. We will. For those of you who haven't gotten your book yet, you got to double up, because chapter 2 is what I'm expecting that you would read for the next session. we really should be covering one chapter per week. But why I would not belabor chapter 1 is because as we discuss 2 and 3 and 4, words that were defined in chapter 1 will come up again. And it would give us opportunity to go back to it to clarify and answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
So for those
All right,
of you who haven't read your book yet, you're kind of behind the 8 ball right now. Unfortunately. But that's not to stop you from, I could plan for our wrap-up session to be a little longer and we could do some review. But I'm not going over chapter 1 again. If you have a particular question, you didn't understand a certain thing, and you want to get some feedback from myself or the group, I can leave like about 15 to 20 minutes into, like we do the chapter 2 to about 8:30. And then we kind of do a review or a recap, which could very well be some ideas that came up in chapter 1 that you want clarity on. But the goal is that we should be finishing a chapter a week.
Okay. If I come across anything, I shall make notation because you're gonna have to bear with me.
Please make notation.
I may ask the same thing 2-3 times, but
please make notation. And also too, if you would like, you can send me an email and I would respond within 48 hours.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
And if you ask a question, I will not only respond to you, I respond to the whole team because it might be a question that somebody else wants to know as well. And so we keep everybody in the learning environment. Okay.
Appreciate it.
And what I want you to go away with and think about, in addition to trying to figure out, once you go to Google and you put in financial scandals, some things are going to come up. The international ones, I've seen, like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years now. It'd be nice if you could do some Caribbean ones or some Bahamian ones that give us a little bit more flavor, because things like Enron and WorldCom, I've seen it every week, every session as it was. But there might be something that is a little bit more at home and a little bit more juicy in terms of availability of information. It would be interesting to have them other discussions so that we could see in a Caribbean context how are some of these things playing out. And
that would be the greatest challenge in regards to local, because I don't think that the press does an excellent job of gathering information. That's a different topic altogether.
Our local, but some of these things had international, like I said, international presence, and you be a judge. I'm not saying that you do. I've seen something out of Antigua. I've seen something out of Jamaica that had connotations that went international, because quite honestly, with the exception of the stealing by reason of employment and whatever have you, a lot of the issues that we had with securities and the financial institutions, they had American, Canadian, or European contacts. And so it was not limited to just the Bahamas. There are some things that went out into the international arena. And what comes to my mind right off the bat was there was one situation where the Securities Commission got involved, but this person had some connection to New York and the SEC in the United States and all the good stuff. And now they were coming to reach to the Bahamas, because it seems as if when the non-Bahamians want to get away from those jurisdictions that have all of these legislation, they somehow come to the Bahamas and they set up shop again. They set up shop again. And it isn't until these international arms reach out to them that we are made known of it. So it's how creative you want to get. And it's your creativity that can give you top marks, as opposed to just pulling it, pasting and clipping and pasting it on. I remember there was a FIFA of the football group who had an international scandal that touched on the Bahamas and issues related to the FIFA World Cups and all them other stuff and so forth. There was all, sorry?
Millions and millions of dollars.
Millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. So there's things out there. You just got to be creative. Any other questions? The earlier you start, the better.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to keep you longer than 9 o'clock, but as you asked those questions, I wanted to clarify for everybody. And it is going to become clearer and clearer as we go into the sessions. But email me and I will respond. If you think of something quick, you could WhatsApp me. One of the things I always ask in all of my sessions is it okay to walk into a store and taste the grapes before you buy them?
Only in the Bahamas. Yeah, taste it before you buy it, they say.
Well, if stealing means taking things that you haven't asked or paid for, then is it ethical to do so?
But in a parting note, stealing only occurs when you leave the store.
Well,
shoplifting occurs by law.
Well, you can't pay for it if you've eaten it because they weigh it by the pound.
But there's a comparative grape that's sitting right there on the shelf that they can measure that one and therefore give me a price.
And the other thing is, where do you wash them before you eat them, when you taste them? Who would have probably handled them prior to you actually tasting them? So it's not only unethical, it's unhealthy.
Well, it depends. God bless worms, God bless the germs, the devil.
Anyhow, on that note, let's call it a night. And I wish you to stay safe and as much best you can to see if you can catch up on the information. And email me, WhatsApp me, and I will respond.
Okay.
Okay. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.